Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Truth and All podcast. I'm Chris Chastain, as always, and with me is a special guest. We've done podcasting before, but here he is back, Jon Butler. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's been a long while since we've been able to do this together.
It
Zone
has.
podcast was the last one we did, but I'm glad to be back and especially talking some baseball tonight. It'll be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been months. It's probably in at least 6 months since we've done any podcast.
At
uh,
least at the very least.
yeah, but yeah, we got a lot of baseball to get into. We're gonna talk about each. We're gonna get into each division and everything. And that should be fun. But for anybody that's new listening, you're a Chicago fan. You're a fan of all Chicago sports, right?
Yep. I was born and raised a White Sox fan, and I got into every other sport as I got older. Bears was always a big one for me, and NFL is about to start. We just saw the Hall of Fame game last night, so I'm excited for that to start up. But yeah, I've always been a Chicago-based sports fan. I like other teams outside of it, but Chicago is my hometown. So
Right. Yeah. That's pretty much me. I'm pretty much anything Atlanta. Mainly because I was born and raised in Atlanta. I really, I mean, people. Here's the thing. People ask me why I'm a fan of these Atlanta teams. I'm like, well, I don't really have a reason. I just am. But yeah, there you go.
I think it's the same thing when it comes to Cleveland, though, too, because it's been such a miserable existence for most of them. I mean, the Atlanta Thrashers disappeared from hockey a while back, and the Falcons haven't done much for the last while. I mean, especially the heartbreaking loss a couple of years ago.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
similar to Cleveland, just that thing of they exist, but they haven't had anything in forever to celebrate.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's probably the closest thing that Atlanta's had to celebrate since the Braves, really.
Yeah,
I mean, if you
old
really think,
'90s Braves.
yeah, it's crazy. In Cleveland, they're similar. Since LeBron James left, they don't have anything to celebrate, even though they think they do. Well, the Indians have been okay. I think the past few seasons they've been better, but for the like you said, for the most part, it's the same thing. But let's go ahead and hop into this because we got quite a bit to talk about, and I think we're going to start with the AL East, and we'll start with the Red Sox. They're 6 games ahead of the Yankees right now. I believe that's right. Uh, is it 6 games?
After tonight, it's 7.5. After
Okay,
tonight.
7.5. We did this a few days ago, so we'll say 7.5. And with or without the injury to Aaron Judge, because I don't know if this really makes that huge of a difference. Do you think the Yankees could come back and win this division?
I don't know. This is a tough one for me because even say they had a healthy Judge, they haven't been playing their best baseball as of recently. And on top of that, Boston has been hot from the very start of the year. And it's even as good as Judge has been, the Yankees rotation hasn't played up to expectations. CC Sabathia has been decent, but Luis Severino over his last 5 games has gotten crushed, which has killed their bullpen, even though they have a stacked bullpen of Zach Britton, Dylan Betances, Aroldis Chapman, Chad Green. They are getting killed right now because the starting rotation isn't doing their job or what they expected them to do. The offense is always going to be there, especially once Gary Sanchez gets healthy. But I mean, the way that the Red Sox have played all year, of Mookie Betts going 2020 before the All Star break, JD Martinez lighting up the league way better than everyone thought he would, just for the sake that he was sitting out there until I think late January or early February until he signed the 5-year deal. But the Red Sox they put full throttle on the gas and they haven't let up since. So even with a healthy Aaron Judge, the Yankees would have a lot of trouble just because of how good Boston is. They have Chris Sale, they have Rick Porcello, you have Craig Kimbrell in the bullpen. Everything is just playing out so perfectly for the Red Sox at this point.
Yeah, it does seem like that. And right now they're 5 games ahead for the wild card race. Talking about the Yankees, and like I said, the Red Sox have really been just all season. They've just dominated the season. Really, think about it. Not just that division. They've dominated the whole league, or the whole league for the most part. And so, with that being said, do you think the Yankees could fall off and maybe even miss the wild card spot? Do you think they could have that kind of slump, or do you think they're for sure going to be a wild card team? Where are you at as far as that goes?
I don't think they're that far. I don't think they'll fall out of it. They've got too much talent between Giancarlo Stanton and some of the others that I named already. They're just in a slump. They're 5-5 in their last 10 games, which isn't a great way to play, especially when you're facing a division rival. But their run differential is a positive 126, which, if you know the Pythagorean theorem, I'm going to use this a couple of times tonight. Mm-hmm. So basically, for every 10 runs more than you allow, so if you have a plus 126, that turns into basically you should be 12 wins above 100 is simply what it is. So every 10 wins or every 10 runs positive that you are should be an extra win above 500. And they're currently 126, and so they're 18 games above 500. They're going to fall down a little bit according to that. But even then, they have so much talent. The offense is there. And the rest of the AL really isn't all that talented. The Athletics and Mariners are definitely up there, as the Athletics currently hold the second wild card spot, and the Mariners are half a game behind them. But after that, you've got the Rays, who are 7.5, the Angels, who are almost 10 games out, and there's just not enough talent for the Yankees to fall that far out. I expect Severino to try and figure out what his problem has been the last month. I don't know why it's not walks, it's not command issues, it's just he's getting hit hard and he's catching too much of the plate. And once they figure that out, they're going to be able to get deeper. He's going to get deeper into games again. He's going to allow that bullpen to get healthy and not be so gassed. So as much as I would like to see the Yankees kind of fall out just because they are the Yankees, I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I think it would be quite a surprise too. And like you said, with their competition, I mean, right there you have, we'll go ahead and talk about them, the Oakland Athletics and the Mariners, which these are teams we'll talk about in a little bit. I would agree with you. If it's not the Yankees, it'll be the Red Sox. One of these two teams will have that wild card spot, but we think it'll be the Yankees. I agree with you there. Let's move on. Let's go to the AL Central. We're gonna go AL then NL. NL probably the next half hour. But the Indians, they seem to have control of the Central. I think we both agree there. But this is just me. I don't know. But this team doesn't seem as dominant as it has been in years past. What do you think about that? Just take me where you think about that.
I'd agree with that. I think, especially last year, they rolled off 22 wins in a row, so that definitely gave them that perception of dominant, like you were saying, over the past couple of years. I think the other difference, too, is that Detroit and Minnesota have both been a lot better than teams. I know Minnesota was expected to be better, but I know a lot of people who are predicting the Tigers for about 40 to 50 wins. They're currently already at 47, so they're ahead of where a lot of people thought they would be, thanks to Nick Castellanos in the outfield. Miguel Cabrera's hurt again, but the Tigers haven't been as miserable as we thought they were. Mm-hmm. But thanks to, there's a lot that's been wrong with the Indians this year. They're 5-5 in their last 10. They're about almost plus 100 run differential, so 10 games above 500, which is right where they sit. Their rotation has been really good, but the offense just hasn't clicked completely. We've seen a stellar year out of Jose Ramirez, where he went almost 30-20 before the All-Star break. He's currently got 32 home runs and I think 25 stolen bases off the top of my head. He's having a stellar year. Francisco Lindor's right there with him, and they are holding up that offense. But a lot of it's come down to their outfield not playing the way they thought. Melky Cabrera is back in the major leagues. They're relying on Leonis Martin, who they just got from the Tigers, and Michael Brantley, who started out really, really well the first 2 months, but hasn't been the same guy over about the last 6 weeks or so. It's the offense that was helping them the last couple of years, along with that stellar rotation. The stellar rotation is still there, but they're not winning games by as many runs as we were used to seeing over the last 2 years, even though they have the offensive production out of Francisco Lindor and Jose Ramirez.
Right, and yeah, they're good enough to work in that division. That's why I don't really think the Twins or the Tigers are gonna compete with the Indians for the division, or they're not even gonna be a wild card team. I don't think so.
No, and I think the biggest reason we thought that the Indians would be ahead of where they were is because of the way the AL Central is. We expected the Twins to be better than what they are, but due to the fact that, I mean, you're sitting in a division with the Royals, the White Sox, the Tigers, and the Twins, none of who expected to be competitive at all this year. Maybe the Twins expected to be around 500 or a bit better because of the way they played last year. But when you have teams that are as big of a rebuild situation as they are in the AL Central, you would expect the Cleveland Indians to have 60, 65 wins already, and they're sitting at 59. You'd expect them to be a few more games higher than they currently are.
I honestly thought they'd be at around 70 wins, actually.
Right.
But I mean, but it's not like they're sitting at 50 or 55, so it's not that big of a deal. They don't have anything to worry about. That's really my point there.
Agreed.
Now let's go on to another team, your team in this division, the Chicago White Sox. Have they met your expectations so far?
This is one where I will admit that I was way higher on the White Sox this year than I probably should have been. A lot of it might have been just the hype within the organization and the fan base of, well, we saw how Reynaldo Lopez played last year to end the season, and same with Lucas Giolito of, these guys can be front of the line starters. And that's not how they started this year, unfortunately. You had Giolito, who could not throw a strike to save his life. He had more walks than strikeouts at one point. Lopez was great for a while, but all of his peripherals said he was going to fall back to about a 3.75 ERA, and he's basically done that since about late May, early June. He's come back to about where he's probably going to sit for his career, unless he can get more swing and misses. But the offense hasn't performed. Yohan Moncada hasn't been what we were hoping. He's hitting about around 230 right now. The on base is still there, and he knows he definitely sees pitches and knows where his strike zone is. He has that mentality. He has that knowledge. We can all see that. A lot of it's just getting his contact rate up, and he's had a bit of bad luck to go with pitches being called outside of the zone as well. If you look at Fangraphs and go to his page, you can see where strikes have been called, and he's probably been one of the unluckiest batters when it comes to that, of those called third strikes or just on the edge where it's a ticky-tack call either way, and he's just been on the wrong side of it. I mean, you have those types of seasons. One of the things that's really been frustrating with the organization, though, is, and it's not a lot on them, it's sometimes just bad luck, but injuries. We've seen Luis Robert go down for a few weeks because of a thumb injury that plagued him last year, which was an issue. We saw Alec Hansen deal with a forearm strain earlier in the season, which was obviously forearm strain usually leads to Tommy John, and nobody ever wants to see that, but he was able to avoid that, luckily. Dane Dunning had an elbow issue for a little bit. A lot of the depth in the organization and the big names that we kind of expected to take the next step into the season and start pushing towards the 2019-2020 season were held back from their development because of injuries. Another big name was Jake Berger, who tears his Achilles in spring training, and about a month later tears it again at his home just walking. So it's another one that a big pick in the 2017 draft that you kind of expected to jump through the organization fairly quickly due to him being a college bat. But it's injuries that have held him back, and it's going to slow down the rebuild by about a year. So maybe we're looking late 2019 where they start to see the big names of Michael Kopech, Eloy Jimenez, Luis Robert, guys like that really take that big step. I mean, Kopech and Jimenez are right there knocking on the door, but I think the front office is going to wait due to the fact that, okay, these other pieces won't be ready, so let's not start the clock on their contracts until we feel like everything is starting to fall into place.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I was kind of curious because, like, win total wise, they're not. I don't even know if they're going to meet how many games they won last year, which was 67. I I think they're on track to lose probably close to 100 games, but I mean injuries they happen. I mean you can't really avoid them. It's just one of those things.
Yeah, everyone deals with it, and then obviously losing Avisail Garcia for a good half of the season so far has hurt them too, because in the 45 or 50 games he's played this year, he's looked excellent.
Mm.
He's had the best home run rate that he's had all of his career. He's hitting the ball with authority, but he just couldn't stay on the field this year due to a hamstring issue. And a lot of it was just issues of, especially the starting rotation, giving up 6 runs in 3 innings. And when you don't have your young starters developing the way you're hoping, you're not going to get the wins that you kind of expected.
Right. So in conclusion, you see good things happening, but there's a long way to go.
Right. There's a lot that's been very, very good this season. I mean, like I said, we've seen some growth out of Yohan Moncada, but the rest of the pieces in the organization have been delayed due to the injuries, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but you look at other sports, it happens all over sports. It's just one of those things you can't really avoid. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I'm about to start off. We're going to go to the AL West now. Is this the toughest division in the American League?
Absolutely. It's much more competitive than I thought it was going to be. I figured the Astros were going to run away with this division and have no competition behind them. I really thought that going into this season, but it's proved us wrong so far.
Yeah, which I mean, that was probably an obvious thing because really I don't think the other two divisions are that competitive. But anyway, I think and let me go and move on. I think both of us have the Astros probably favorites. I would say favorites right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that division definitely. There's, as much as I like what the Athletics and the Mariners are doing, there's no way that they catch up to them, I think.
Yeah. Well, but all right, let's move on. Between the Mariners and the Athletics, which one, if say they were to take over, either one were to take over the division, if the Astros kind of fall off or whatever, which team would it be? And from there, I would say that team's going to be the favorite to go to the wild card too.
This was a tough one to me when we were kind of talking about this when I first saw it. It's really tough just because the Oakland Athletics don't have a great starting rotation. I mean, you've got Edwin Jackson, who's on his, I think, 13th or 14th team on his career at this point. You've got Trevor Cahill, who can never stay healthy, and you've got Brett Anderson, who he's been one of those guys that his entire career he's had so much potential, but has never lived up to it. But the Mariners are a team where they've got a better starting rotation, but I don't like the offense as much. But if I had to give it to one, I'd probably give it to the Athletics just because I really like their manager, Bob Melvin, and I like what they've been doing with their power hitting first baseman, Matt Olson, and Matt Chapman at third base. I feel like they've got the better overall team, and they've been playing a lot hotter. They've got the much better bullpen as well, overall depth-wise.
Right, yeah. I would they're so close. They both teams are like, well, we'll talk about the standings. They're both neck and neck right now. Let me see where they're standing. Athletics sitting at 64 and 46. Mariners sitting at 63 and 46. So as far as that goes, it's kind of a toss up.
Well, and you've got the Astros at 69 and 41. There was no way I would have predicted them being this close at any point this season. But I know Mariners fans will probably hate me when I say this, but we all know what the Mariners are going to do, and they're going to choke as it comes down the stretch. I hate to say it because Felix Hernandez was one of my favorite pitchers for the longest time, and he's never had a chance to really perform in the playoffs because the Mariners always find a way to just bungle it up and screw it up every year in and year out.
Yeah.
Another reason I just can't buy into them. It's in their nature, no matter who they put on the team.
It kind of reminds me of like the Chargers, the NFL, and the.
Yep, it's a really good comparison.
Something's gonna happen. Anything.
They've got it there, but they just can't finish the job.
That's funny. But the good news is I think, and we talked about this earlier, and I think we both think that one of these teams are definitely going to go to the wild card just because the AL is so weak.
Yeah, it's one of them. I think it's going to be the Athletics.
Yeah,
I like the team better. They've got more power. They've got a much better defense in my mind as well. They've been able to hold off their opponents. Sean Manaea is not your typical ace, but he gets the job done. He doesn't walk a lot of batters. He doesn't strike out a lot either, but he's able to hold off hard contact, is able to keep the ball inside the stadium, which obviously if you do that, you're going to have a good time. So
right.
I don't think anyone gets past the Astros, Red Sox, or Yankees anyways when it comes to it, but it still wouldn't be bad for the Athletics to get that playoff experience, even if it is just a one-game wild card.
Yeah, which is what it would probably be.
Right. And I will say I'm really excited about the Athletics organization for the future just because they've got a lot of very, very good pieces coming up. One of my favorites that we might be able to see, and keep your eye out for this name, is Jesus Luzardo. Mm-hmm. He is one of my favorite starting pitcher prospects right now, and it's a possibility that the Athletics will want to make a push. They may call him up in September as a bullpen piece, just to kind of get him that experience of what the major leagues really has to offer, because he's going to be a part of that rotation next year. They have a lot of question marks there, but he's a guy that has been striking out at least 10 batters per 9 innings in the minors. He's only walking about 1.5 batters at AAA, so he's on fire, and he's a name to watch as the season winds down because he's going to be a big part of this future, and he's only 20 years old.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to watch out for him over the next few months and basically over the playoffs, depending on how far the Athletics go, if this happens, of course. So let's kind of wrap up the AL from here. Actually, the Orioles, the worst team in the AL period, probably the league. They're the worst team in the league, right?
Yeah. I don't know. It's really tough. I would have to go with yes. But the funny thing is that ever since they dealt Manny Machado, they actually lead all of MLB with the most runs scored since they dealt him, which I don't understand how you deal your best player and suddenly become a better overall offense. That makes no sense to me whatsoever.
That really doesn't. But I'm seeing what you're saying right here. That's wild. And they've won like what, 4 or 5 of their last 6 or 7. They've
been playing really well since they made that trade. But here's the crazy thing to me, and it's almost video game like numbers at this point. They are 43 games out of their division.
Oh my gosh.
That shows how good the Red Sox and Yankees have been and how bad the Orioles have been all year. But the Orioles are still on pace for a miserable year, even though they've played their ass off the last 2 weeks. They have got to be the worst team in MLB. The Royals are right there with them though, because of the fact that they don't have anything really either. Well, the Royals have been just as bad, but I'd probably consider the Orioles worse.
Well, and somebody might look and say the Orioles are 43 games behind, but the Royals are only 25 games behind. But if you look at the record, the Royals are only 2 games ahead of the Orioles. So they're both historically bad. So we'll just say that. So my last for the AL as a whole, who do you think comes out of this division or this league?
I figured this question was going to be asked, and I've been fighting myself about it all week because part of me wants to say the Astros just because they have been so good. You've got the rotation with Verlander and Keuchel and Garrett Cole. You've got such a good rotation there and a good offense. But the Red Sox have just been so damn good all year. And it's, for me, I'm going with the Red Sox. Their rotation doesn't look as deep, but I like their bullpen better. They've got less question marks, but that offense between Mookie Betts, JD Martinez, Xander Bogaerts, as long as all of them are healthy, that's worse. That's much better than the Houston Astros. The Astros have been good this year, but you're relying on Carlos Correa and Jose Altuve, who have missed a lot of this season, and we don't know how great Altuve is going to be when he comes back off of his DL stint. Same with Carlos Correa. But the Boston Red Sox are healthy. They just lost Ian Kinsler earlier tonight, but they've got depth in their offense where they can lose a guy like that and not really miss a beat just because they have so many bats that can hit.
Right. I'll tell you what, I'm really hoping the Yankees and Red Sox meet up in the championship series. I would watch probably all 7 games of that. I think that would be a fun series. I really
would, and especially if every part of their team is clicking. That we could see a game of 2-1 or 15-13, just because they have so much power, and both teams have so much power in their bats, and that would be something spectacular to watch.
It really would be. That would be one hell of a series. I really believe that. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the AL. I think we covered it pretty well. Let's move on to the NL, and we're going to start with the division that, the NL Central.
I know you're not looking forward to this one, but
those freaking Cubs, yeah. So let's go ahead and do it. For the sake of me not getting irritated at these Cubs fans for another playoff season like I have been probably the past 2 or 3 years, is there a real chance or any chance that the Cubs miss the playoffs right now?
No, and I'm actually looking at updated numbers here. Originally, it was 94.2% chance of them making the playoffs. It's actually gone up. Even though they lost the other night to the Padres, they are 95.7% chance to make it, according to Fangraph's playoff odds. And I think a lot of that number goes into the fact that, yes, they are 63-46. They're only a game and a half ahead of the Brewers, but they've been doing all of this where you haven't had Chris Bryant for nearly half the season, and even when he's played, he hasn't been great. They've missed out on Yu Darvish completely, even after they signed him to a 6-year deal. And that's probably one of the worst 6-year deals at this point, just the way it looks, because I don't think he's pitched more than 50 innings at most.
Mm-hmm.
And they got Cole Hamels recently, which I don't know. He had a good start as his debut recently. I don't know how long that continues, but it's better than what they were throwing out there in Tyler Chatwood, who was walking everybody. I could probably go up there and draw a walk against him because he could not find the strike zone. But they've been performing and playing their ass off even with all of these issues, and they're going to make it. Not to say that the Brewers are bad, but a lot of the NL is still very, very bad behind them. Just overall, it's a much tighter race in the NL than it is the AL.
Right.
But if the Cubs get healthy, they could be a very dangerous team, even though when they were healthy, they weren't performing like the offense that a lot of people thought they would be.
Well, I would like to say if the Brewers play like they have the past 4 or 5 games, which isn't well, including tonight, which they're about to lose again for the 3rd time in a row, the Cubs are going to, it's a 100% chance. It might as well be. I mean, look, the Brewers got embarrassed, the other night? When they lost 21-5. So embarrassing. That
was Thursday night because that was to the Dodgers. That was 7 home runs served up.
Yeah. So I guess we might as well get ready for another season of wanting to turn Twitter off.
I don't know how far they get, though. This is something I've debated with some of my friends at work because they are Cubs fans, and it's they don't even feel confident about them getting very far. just because you're going to have to face a lot of good teams, and if they're not healthy, they're not going anywhere. So that's something they will make the playoffs, but I don't know how far they really go outside of the division series.
And I was kind of thinking about that too earlier, and I was like, I just thought maybe they don't make it as far as I'm thinking that they might make it to the NL Championship Series, and I'm really hoping they don't. The quicker they're eliminated, the better it is for my sake of getting irritated. Yeah, yeah, really. Well, now we got that out of the way. Let's talk about the Pirates and the Cardinals, the two teams that are right ahead of them, or right below them. Or the Brewers, too. The Brewers are right there.
I was going to say, we should include the Brewers in this because the division race is a lot tighter than it really seems.
Yeah, it really is. And I don't know why I wasn't thinking or whatever, but when I put this out. But yeah, the Brewers, Pirates, and Cardinals, they're all right there. But how does the wild card race look? And I think I know why. I think I know why it didn't. I thought the Brewers were pretty much gonna make it anyway. But between the Pirates and the Cardinals, do you think either team has the pieces to get on top of the wild card race with them sitting right? They're sitting right there in the middle of the pack of that wild card race, but I think they're 5 or 6 games, maybe 7, behind that race. Do you think either team has the pieces to get to the top of that race? And we can add the Brewers to that, sure, too.
I think so. The Brewers still, I like them a lot, especially with Christian Yelich in their outfield, Lorenzo Cain. They've got one of the best offenses in the league, and even though they aren't showing it recently, Jesus Aguilar has been in a huge slump. Their power hitting first baseman who was in the home run derby, he's kind of hit a slump recently, but there's a lot to like with the Brewers just because they have their bullpen, which is able to save them in case their starter doesn't have their best stuff that night. We've seen Josh Hader go out there and strike out 6 guys in 2.5 innings of work. They've got Jeremy Jeffress, who's really good again, and they've got a bunch of other bullpen arms that can help them maybe not be the depth of the rotation that they would like, but they have guys to get outs and give you quality innings. The Brewers, I think, can still make a push for the division, and I think they'll be right there. They're waiting on their ace, Jimmy Nelson, to come back. There's still a possibility he pitches this season, maybe not until September, but the possibility of him coming back could be that acquisition that they're looking for, even though it's not technically a trade or anything else. It may be that youthful energy that they need to bring in and get everybody pumped and make that final push. As for the Pirates and the Cardinals really haven't done anything. They didn't make a deal before the trade deadline. They're still all of August if they really felt like they wanted to, but after dealing Tommy Pham to the Tampa Bay Rays and getting a couple of minor league prospects back, I think they're just kind of sitting content. They want to see what they can do the rest of the season and make 2019 more of their big year while making the push. As for the Pirates, I like what they did before the trade deadline. They were able to get Chris Archer from the previously mentioned Tampa Bay Rays, and they also stole Keone Kela from the Texas Rangers to add to their bullpen, along with Kyle Crick. There's another bullpen piece in there, and Felipe Vasquez, who's their closer. And as weird as ever, I know once the Chris Archer deal went down, a lot of Twitter and a lot of social media kind of blew up of, well, why are they trading for him if they traded away Garrett Cole 6 months before in the offseason? It doesn't make much sense. The difference is, though, with Garrett Cole, he was going into arbitration. He was going to get paid more. Chris Archer has a contract through 2021, I think. And his is already set. His is already set in stone of this is the money he's getting paid. That won't change as it does with arbitration, depending on how you played the previous year. So I think the Pirates could make a push. They've been a sneaky good offense, and I'm waiting to see what they can do to kind of finish up this year. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's so, like you said, it's so close between the Brewers and the Cubs. It's so close. And I'll keep on thinking about this, and it's so unfortunate. The Brewers led the division most of the season. It's just over the last couple of weeks they lost it, or not lost it, but they fallen back behind. So it's pretty unfortunate that that's happened. But I honestly think that what's that?
Well, especially heading into the All-Star break, losing 6 of 8 was worse, and then kind of coming out as flat as they did out of the All-Star break, they've been really cold. So, I mean, if they can get back to where they were, they've got the offense to carry them. So,
Yeah, it's definitely not over by any means. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter. The Cubs will be a wild card if they're not winning the division. So really, that's really pointless. But besides that, and like you said, the Pirates and the Cardinals. Didn't the Cardinals fire somebody at the All-Star break? That's what I thought.
Just before the All-Star break,
fired their manager.
Manager Mike Matheny, who should have been gone probably at the end of last year. He's one of those old school mentality guys of, no, I see it as this, even though analytics will say something completely different. And we know how big sabermetrics is in the baseball community nowadays. Almost every front office uses it. Managers use it because of the fact that we can see how well players, if a lefty is bad at hitting lefties, or if a righty is better at hitting lefties than another righty. It's everywhere in the game. And unfortunately, you can't be that old school manager anymore of, no, I see everything, I know everything. It's just not that way as it is. The game has changed so much. And Matheny was one of those guys that you could tell the clubhouse didn't feel comfortable, and he didn't want to go with the new analytics and try and learn from it. It was never his style.
Yeah, it was pretty much. I just think it was a bad decision to do it at the time they did. They should have already done it. If you were gonna do it, you should have done it during the off season in January or before then. Even I just think that was a bad decision, and I think it could come back to bite them anyway. Even now, maybe that was the wrong decision. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't gonna make a difference. But I think I would agree with you. The Pirates, I think they're a little bit better, and they'll be the ones. If it's not the Brewers, it's going to be the Pirates in that second spot or the wild card. But let's kind of move on to the NL East. And normally, I know the hot topic here is the Braves and the Phillies, as they've exceeded everyone's expectations by far, by way out of my expectations, because I would have never thought the Braves would be 10 games over 500 right now, or 12 games actually. But I think really, to me, the bigger storyline here is the Cardinals, or the Nationals, excuse me. Now at the time, the other day when we were talking about, or when I was thinking about this, they were under 500. Now they're 2 games above 500, still lower than anybody. Or they still have bombed everybody's expectations, as in they haven't even met them. So what's wrong with this team at this point? It just seems like there's so many negative storylines around it. Just kind of take me through it.
When it comes to that, there's been a lot with the 2018 Nationals that I think people expected that they didn't get. So one of the biggest things was Harper. In the first part of the season, he was miserable. He was absolutely bad compared to what we were used to seeing, because he's let me pull up his career stats, but he's usually about a 280. Yeah, he's a 278, 385 type hitter this is his triple slash, which is average, on-base percentage, and slugging, where he normally slashes 278, 385, and 512. This year, in the first half, he was hitting about a 210 average, which we know isn't always the full story. But when you're hitting 210, it matters how much your on-base is, but they needed him to be healthy. They needed him to be producing runs, which he wasn't. They lost Ryan Zimmerman early in the season at first base. Daniel Murphy was still coming off of his knee surgery over the offseason, so they were waiting on him to get healthy, as he's a big part of their offense when they're going. And they were relying on Bryce Harper to do everything, and he couldn't find his groove. So that was a big part of it. And the other big part was their rotation. They had Max Scherzer, they had Steven Strasburg, great 1-2 punch, one of the best in all of baseball. Gio Gonzalez was in their rotation for a while, and they recently traded him. No, they didn't trade him. I thought they did. I'm thinking fantasy. That's why. But Gio Gonzalez hasn't pitched to the same way that he did last year. I kind of expected him to regress the way he has this year, just because the way peripherals were looking. Everything was saying he was going to be around a 3.5 ERA, not the 2.9 that we saw last year. But a lot of it was that rotation, and between losing Murphy, Zimmerman, Adam Eaton there for a while, it's hard to keep an offense going when you are playing Wilmer Defoe and Michael A. Taylor, the guys that just are at best replacement level players, guys that you plug in when somebody's hurt. So you have to rely on them to try and produce offense. It just doesn't work. I think the offense was the biggest thing for them, because we know everyone on that team can hit a bomb whenever they want, but when you've got half your team hurt, it's hard to win a game.
Like the other night when they embarrassed the Mets.
Absolutely. When they are hot, they are hot.
Yeah, I could not help but laugh at that.
But the one thing I do want to talk about before we move on from the Nationals, though, is Juan Soto. If you guys have not watched much baseball, or at least stick to your team and haven't paid attention to the Nationals, look at Juan Soto. He's a 19-year-old outfielder that they called up, and he has been great ever since he came up. And it's not just a fluke either. He's got a great hit tool. He knows how to hit the ball well, great contact, and he knows how to get on base as well. He's similar to Yohan Moncada. He's got a great strike zone, but he knows how to hit the ball way better. And it's a 19-year-old kid that barely was in the minor leagues, and he is dominating. He has been one of the best players since being called up. And it's so stellar to see a 19-year-old doing what he's doing. And the last time that happened for the Nationals was Bryce Harper. So it just shows what he's doing.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, let's, before we move on from the Nationals, do you think, and from what you said, I kind of not really sure how you feel about this. Do you think they could turn things around down the final 2 months of the season?
Yes, I will.
Or do you think?
Say yes.
I think that's a bad question, because could means that they maybe not. Do you think they will?
I'll stick my neck out there and say yes. I think they come out, even though they are 5.5 games behind the Phillies. I think they come back and they win this division. And the reason I say it is they've got the offense. You still have Scherzer, and even though Strasburg isn't healthy right now, they've finally been getting the performance out of Tanner Roark, who was normally their 4th starting pitcher, that they expected. Jeremy Hellickson has been pretty decent for them. They've been able to piece together the back end of that rotation. And once Strasburg gets healthy, they are going to be in a perfect position to take it over. Their bullpen has been really, really good as of late. Sean Doolittle, once he comes back as well, if they can just get healthy, they'll make a strong push for this division, especially with Bryce Harper. As I said before, he was looking really bad, but after the All-Star break, he's currently hitting .359. So he's regressing back to in the positive way that we kind of all expected.
Yeah, I had a feeling you would say that, and I don't disagree. I have a feeling the same thing is going to happen. They're going to come back and they're going to win the division. It's going to be close between the 3 teams, which kind of leads to our next point here, between the Braves and the Phillies, because I don't really see the sense in talking about the Mets or the Marlins, because they're pretty much done. We can talk about them next season, but both teams have exceeded our expectations so far, like I said earlier. But maybe it's just, I don't know if it's just me, but I have a feeling it's just weird for 2 teams in one division to be exceeding expectations as much as these 2 teams are. It feels like one of these teams is just going to fall off towards the end. Maybe it's the last month, maybe it's September. What do you think about that? And if you think one of these teams are going to fall off, which one is it? And both, if you think both fall off, by all means, go ahead.
I don't think both will fall off. My call for that is going to be the Philadelphia Phillies. As much as I like what they've done, and they were actually a team I was calling for this offseason, that going into this season, watch out for them. They are going to be much better than people think. They are going to exceed expectations. And so far I've been right on that, but I expect them to kind of start falling off the cliff just a little bit. Jake Arrieta is not the same dominant pitcher he was back when he was with the Cubs. And Aaron Nola's there. He is one of my favorite pitchers in all of the MLB. He is absolutely amazing. But the rest of their rest of their rotation's kind of shaky, and they have been the luckiest team all season. If you look at their record in one-run games, they are 20-10, which that's usually teams sit around the 500 mark, so you'll be 12-12 or 14-12. It's really to get that lucky when you're 10 games above 500 in the one-run games. It's usually pretty lucky, especially when you look at their run differential of only plus 30. When they are 13 games above 500, when they really should be about 3. They shouldn't be as high as they are, but when you're winning close games, that'll do it for you. So I expect the Phillies to fall off. The Braves, I expect to actually get a little bit better, just because of the way that they've got a lot of youth in Ozzie Albies, and they've got a better offense overall to me. So I think the Braves stick around. The Phillies are going to start to trail off just because I don't like their pitching as much.
Right, yeah. And when you said that, I was looking at they should be 3 games, where you said they should be 3 games ahead, and it makes sense. I mean, it really does. But so between the Phillies and the Braves, since you think the Nationals are going to win this division, do you think the Braves or the Nationals, or the Braves or the Phillies, could compete for that last wild card spot? Because one of these is going to the Central winner, or the Central not winner, excuse me.
Yeah, more than likely one of them is. I don't know. Both of them. That's where this gets messy, because the wild card right now is so up in the air. It's not as decided as the American League,
Right.
because you have the Brewers, who are a game and a half up. The Atlanta Braves hold the 2nd spot. Diamondbacks are 1 back. Rockies are 2.5 back. The Pirates, Nationals, Cardinals, and Giants are only 5 games back. So you've got, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 teams that are all within reach of the wild card.
Yeah.
I think one of the teams in this division, well, a couple of teams in this division, are going to be highly disappointed just with the way the season ends, because I think the Braves and the Phillies are likely to miss the playoffs at this point. I think that, like I said, I think the Nationals come back, win this division, and I think because of how competitive the NL West is, and we'll get to them here in a second, I think that's going to prevent one of these teams from making the playoffs. I had the Brewers tagged all season as one of the wild card spots, and I think they still hold it. But I think the other one goes to the NL West. And unfortunately, between the Phillies, Braves, and Nationals,
One gets it.
Only one of them gets it. Only one of them.
Yeah, and you could say, and maybe when it comes down to stretch, maybe all 3 of them deserve it. But if you don't win the games, then you don't deserve it at the same time. So, I mean, it's just one of those things. But you can't say, I think, even though between the Braves and the Phillies, they'll be one of them or both of them is going to be disappointed. The way that how much progress they've made this season, you can't really beat them down for it. It's impressive, to be honest.
Oh, absolutely. That's probably a very good way of putting it. As I think that Phillies and Braves fans both expected to maybe sit around 500, maybe have some fun this year, not be where they are. I mean, the Braves came on fast because of Ronald Acuna and Ozzie Albies and their youth movement, and they still have a lot in their farm to come up, especially in 2019. But the Phillies have been especially impressive just because they haven't had the best team, and they have a lot of theirs is still in the minors. But just the way that they've played and bringing in Jake Arrieta has worked for them. Even if he's not a dominant pitcher, he has brought that competitive nature and veteran leadership that you needed in that locker room to go, hey, we are here. We are here to compete. We can do this.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's going to be very exciting down the stretch to see especially this division between these three teams. See which one actually gets it done.
Just because they had such differing storylines to start the season. I mean, the Nationals, we all expected to run away with it. And to mention that, you said we didn't want to talk about the Mets, but can I just say how impressive it is that they started 11-1, and now they are actually worse than the Miami Marlins.
You got a point there. And even though I think the Marlins have 2 more losses, but they're like right there. I think with the Marlins have 2 more wins or something like that.
Yeah, they have 2 more losses and 2 more wins. Yeah. So, but it's just the fact that the Mets started out so hot, 11-1, now, and then after that, everything just got swept off the table, just done. And it's been injuries, it's been hand, foot, mouth disease, it's been
everything,
just everything under the sun. And the Mets continue to impress me. I think they're actually more Chargers-like in the MLB than the Mariners, just because they are the team that's supposed to be good every year, and then half their team just dies because whatever reason. Half their team gets injured, the other half is underperforming, and it's just amazing. Year in and year out, they seem to find better and funnier ways to screw it up.
It really is. It's messed up, and you think about just 2 years ago, they were competing for a championship, for a World Series, and now look at them. They're one of the worst teams in the league.
And the same thing goes for the Royals. The Royals and the Mets 3 years ago in 2015 were competing against each other in the World Series, and now they are both just absolutely drop dead.
Yeah, it's messed up. Like, and that's the thing about baseball, I guess. Things change every year. It's not really that predictable, to be honest. It's going from year to year.
I think it's any sport but NBA. You look at football, you can change within 3 years and be worst to first. And the same goes with baseball, especially when you build your team upon pitching like the Mets did of Syndergaard, DeGrom, Matz, Wheeler, all these great youthful arms. But especially in baseball, you throw one pitch too hard or you stretch the wrong way, and all of a sudden you're out a season and a half. And that just kills a team. That's why it's impressive that the Cubs, the Astros, the Red Sox is a little bit different, but the Astros and the Cubs and the Dodgers building off of bats mostly and going, we're going to keep drafting bats, build up our offense, and figure out our pitching from there. You have that strong core to be able to carry you even when your pitching is bad.
Yeah, you're right. And now football is a little less. That's a little different. Mm-hmm. It's more predictable because Tom Brady's going to go to the Super Bowl or be right there in the championship every year. But on the other side, you don't really know in the NFC. But besides that, we're back to baseball here. But yeah, I would agree with what you said. Now let's move on to the NL West. After a bad start to the season, the Dodgers, which they were pretty off to a historically bad start, right?
For their team, yeah, they were. It was one of the
not
worst
historically, but
for their franchise, yeah, they were not used to starting as bad as they did.
Yeah, absolutely, and now they're only 1 game ahead of the Diamondbacks, or they're currently 1 game ahead of the Diamondbacks and 2 games ahead of the Rockies. The division's still very tight. But do you think the Dodgers have what it takes to win this division?
I think so, yeah. And especially they've basically become the NL All-Star team after getting Manny Machado and Brian Dozier before the trade deadline. That was, not only huge for them, but terrible for the rest of the NL West, just because of the fact that you already had a very good offense on paper, and you're adding 2 of the best players in the game at shortstop and second base. All of a sudden you get this literal all-star team that you get to put together, which has got to be fun for them day in and day out. You still have Clayton Kershaw out there doing what he's doing, not as dominant as he used to be, but he's giving you quality innings. And then you have Kenta Maeda, Walker Buehler, Rich Hill, able to hold down the rest of that rotation. And you've got Ross Stripling, who has had a breakout season this year. He's not walking a lot of people. He's striking out about 9 or 10 people per 9. And one of the names to keep an eye out for is Julio Urias. He is a 21-year-old pitcher who's coming back from an injury. He got injured when he was 19 years old, but that's another bullpen piece that they're going to have to going down the stretch. So they don't have to rely on Kershaw and Maeda and the rest of these guys to go 7-8 innings every night. They can go, hey, get us 5-6 innings. We've got enough players to hold everything else down, so let's go from here. I mean, I really like what they're doing.
Yeah, and I won't disagree with anything you said there.
I will say, if you look, if you look at the Dodgers' first about month and a half, they were constantly about 5, 6, 7, 8 games below 500. They really didn't really start to kick it into gear until June is when they really started to heat up. So you played 2 bad months of baseball, and when the Diamondbacks and Rockies, especially the Diamondbacks, started out as hot as they did, nobody thought they were going to catch up, but the Dodgers know what they're doing. So they're a tough team to hold off because they have the money, they have the prospects, they have the talent to constantly go with it.
Right, which kind of leads us off to what the next question really was. So between the Rockies and the Diamondbacks, if either of these teams, because I don't know if either of these teams could, do you think either one could overthrow the Dodgers?
If I had to go with one, just because of how close this division is, it is possible. Anything's possible. You could have Kershaw get hurt, and all of a sudden he's out for the next month, and that really hurts the depth of the rotation for the Dodgers. If I'm picking one, I'm going with the Diamondbacks. They're not as deep as they were to start the season after losing Taijuan Walker and Zach Godley not pitching the way they expected him to after seeing what he did last year. I think they still have the best possibility to do it because you have a decent bullpen with Brad Boxberger, Archie Bradley. The rotation is still pretty good, not as deep as they wanted, but you still have Paul Goldschmidt, AJ Pollock. You have the offense to be able to hold off opponents, and especially they seem to be much more comfortable in their home park. They've played really well away from Chase Field. They're 32-23 right now, so when you can win on the road, that's always important. They have a winning record at home, not by much, but if you can go on the road and play well, you're always going to be competitive. The Diamondbacks have the possibility. It's another thing of coming down to help.
Yeah, and the Rockies don't play the Rockies, don't play nearly as well on the road or really at home.
Well, and the Rockies have been such a weird team because this last month they have been absolutely on fire. Their rotation had I think, less than 2 ERA in the entire all of July. Their starting rotation put together a less than 2 ERA, which is just impressive itself, especially when you are pitching at Coors, which is a offensive juggernaut ballpark. I could probably go hit a 350-foot bomb just because the ball just flies out of that stadium. But the fact that the Rockies were able to do it, they're still talented. I kind of worry about the back end of that bullpen with Wade Davis at times and the rest of it, even though they spent something like $60 million total between all the pieces that they got for the bullpen. They've been one of the rockiest bullpens in all of baseball this year. Adam Ottavino's been great for them, but they just don't have the same depth they thought they were going to have. I love the offense, but it's still tough. I prefer the Diamondbacks over them.
Yeah, I get what you mean. But you do now. I know you haven't really said much about them. The San Francisco Giants that are not that far behind. They're only 5 games behind, even the Diamondbacks. Do they have any chance to make it there, or are they just lucky? Where are you at with the Giants? Because I think, of course, they've made progress because they were absolutely horrible last season. But they're right there competing this season. Where are you at with them?
For me, I think they're kind of lucky. According to the Pythagorean theorem, which I've mentioned a couple of times, they're minus 21. They should be below 500. They've gotten a bit lucky. I just don't think they have the talent for it because Andrew McCutchen and Evan Longoria were great ads for them because last year they had almost no production, defense or offensive wise, out of those two positions in center field and third base. But the rest of that team is just so mediocre. I mean, your starting rotation's been way better than I thought it would be. Madison Bumgarner, of course, you can always count on. But the rest of that rotation has been good, not great. But, I mean, they've got next to no offense. They've been hurt this year, and they've got to rebuild. I feel like they've got to take this offseason, blow it all up, and try and stash as many prospects as they can.
Right. Which they're about to be 6 games behind because they're down 6-3 to the Diamondbacks right now.
Yeah. That never helps when you lose to your division opponents.
Yeah, that makes it a little worse.
They were a team I didn't believe in, though. When I saw them adding McCutchen and Longoria, I didn't understand those moves because the Dodgers and the Rockies and Diamondbacks were so good ahead of them the previous year that, yeah, adding big names is great, but it only does so much when the rest of your team surrounding it is not stellar. I mean, you've got to have the offensive output. You've got to be able to put together a decent rotation, and they couldn't do it. They don't have the organizational depth that you need to be competitive in that kind of division.
Right, yeah, and especially when you have 3 teams that are very talented ahead of you. I mean, it's one thing if you're in the AL.
Right. And if you're in the AL Central or if you're sitting in the NL East or NL Central, you can kind of get away with it like that. But when you've got, like you said, those 3 impressive teams, it's a lot harder.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know where this is going. Who do you got coming out of the National League?
To make it to the World Series?
Yep.
It's got to be the Dodgers. There's not even an argument for it. Maybe before the trade deadline, before all the action we saw last week, maybe I could have chosen another team. But when you can field an offense of Cody Bellinger, Manny Machado, Brian Dozier, Max Muncy, who's been an absolute standout this season. He's been so much fun to watch, even after his recent skid. Justin Turner, Yasiel Puig, who is absolutely still one of my favorite players in all of baseball because he is just an absolute nut. Licking his bat, everything that he does is just a riot. But when you can field that type of offense and still throw out an ace in Clayton Kershaw and the rest of that rotation, it's really hard to get by. We saw the Dodgers get to the World Series last year with probably a worse team than they have this year. So it's Dodgers all the way. I think we see Dodgers Red Sox, which would be a blast for media to watch because 2 of the biggest markets and 2 juggernauts like this, 2 of the biggest markets to see it would be a lot of fun.
And if we go by your Pythagorean theorem thing that you were talking about earlier, they should be 10 games above 500. I mean, they're
almost
not.
11 at this point, yeah.
11.
Well, they're 12 games right now, so they're right where they should be.
Okay, yeah. And I read that record wrong.
Yeah, because they're 61-49, so they're 12 games above 500. And the Diamondbacks should be a few games behind, but they're sitting where they are. Right. They're the best offense in the National League, the Dodgers, that is. And they've got so much talent after that trade deadline. It's almost like they're on MLB The Show, I want this guy, I want this all-star, I want this one. They got everything that they needed.
Yeah, they get pretty much whoever they want. If you want this guy, just go get it.
Well, and they still have a lot of their big prospects too. So they really didn't give up much to get everything they got.
It's like, I'll give you this nobody and bring Manny over here.
Yep.
That's messed up. It really is. Well, I think that's pretty much it. You have anything else about baseball that you really any takes or whatever?
I want to see who your picks are for the AL and the NL, and who meets in the World Series.
I think for me, it's hard. It's hard for me. I think I'm gonna take the Yankees. The Red Sox. I don't know. I'm not really as sold on the Red Sox yet. And of course, in the NL, I have the Dodgers, just because I think they're the best team. You really think about it, all these other teams are not really, let me go ahead and get where I'm going to get to. The Dodgers are miles ahead of most of these teams.
Yeah.
If you really think about it, if we would have said the Nationals would have competed, but they're really not going to. So I would say the Dodgers and the Yankees, but the Red Sox is definitely possible. Between the Red Sox and the Yankees, if they meet in the championship or the championship series, it's gonna go 7 games. But I would definitely say the Yankees and the Dodgers, and I want to pick the Yankees to win the World Series. I really do.
Really?
Yeah, I want to, but I don't know. It's close. It's really, really close.
That AL is so tough because I do want to see the Astros repeat. I think that would be a lot of fun, and they've got so many good pitchers. The Red Sox have the offense, and I mean, we saw what the Red Sox did last year. They beat the Indians, but then they just couldn't do anything after that. So it's all about who gets hot at the right time. So the AL is up in the air.
It's pretty clear.
The NL will probably be a lot weirder than we expect it to be, but I'm riding the Dodgers all the way.
You think they're going to win the World Series?
I don't know. I would probably jump on them if I had to pick one right now. I would take the Dodgers. Yeah.
I think my heart wants to pick the Yankees just mainly because I want to see the Yankees win, but it's hard especially with the Aaron Judge injury right now, and just the way they've been playing recently. I think right now I have to go with the Dodgers, but I really wanted to pick the Yankees, but it's hard. It's hard not to pick the Dodgers right now, just because I think the Red Sox are going to fall off in the end some, and I honestly think the Yankees might win the division, but I think it'll be close. It's going to be very close I think that's going to be one of the ones to really watch. The AL East and, of course, the NL. I think generally the whole NL's one to really watch. If you're interested in competitive, close baseball for the rest of the regular season.
Absolutely. We could get down to the last 2 weeks, and especially in the NL East and the NL West, we could see the standings look different every single day. You could have the Diamondbacks on top for 2 days, then the Rockies on top for 2, and then the Dodgers up for 3. And same with the NL East. You're going to have it be a duel, or they're going to be duking it out between the Phillies, Braves, and Nationals the rest of the way. So there's going to be a lot of competitive baseball, and especially there is still the waiver trade deadline by the end of August. So there may still be a move that we don't know that's going to happen that could affect everything in the long run.
Right, yeah, it's definitely possible. Anything at this point is possible just because it's still 2 months to go, pretty much. So, out of all the whole league, the one team that we did not talk about that much that we should watch out for, meaning one team that could be a wild card out of the ones the ones we talked about, one that could actually legit have a chance to make the World Series. And I think you pretty much know who those teams are that we were talking about: the Athletics, the Mariners, those teams.
That's
tough hard.
One. I mean, because the Athletics would be the only team out of the AL that could be the biggest surprise. Out of the NL, I would say probably the Brewers, because as weird as they are they've been playing some players out of position recently just because they're looking for that offense, they're looking for that spark plug. I feel like we've seen the game change, because back in 05 and 06 and 07, 10 years ago, we saw a lot of these teams focus on starting pitching of, we need you guys to go 7 innings in the playoffs. You have to get these batters out. And I mean, you look at last season, you look back in 2016 as well, these teams aren't focusing on starting pitching. They're going, okay, we got through the order 1.5 times, 2 times. We're going to pull our starting pitcher and start throwing these flamethrowers out there of guys that throw 97, 98, that throw nasty sliders, nasty splitters, nasty curveballs, of just stuff you can't hit, especially when you're sitting on a 98-mile-an-hour fastball. And that's what the Brewers have. You have Josh Hader, you have Corey Knebel, you have Jeremy Jeffries. You've got a nasty bullpen in there that could shut down anyone when they need them, especially Josh Hader can go 2 innings, 2+ if you need him to. And you still have that offense to support them. I mean, they just had a walk-off tonight over the Rockies, so if they've got all the offense they need, they've got the bullpen. They don't have the starting pitching you expect, but the game has changed. So I think the Brewers are a team out of the NL to really watch that I think could be the upset of the year, just making the World Series that somebody would go, I didn't see this happening. I didn't believe in them, but yet here they are.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't say I believe in them, but if I had to pick one or two teams, it would be them, and then I would actually agree with both of your picks on even the Athletics out of the AL. And I was looking at your opening day picks that you've been to your Twitter, and they're still looking pretty strong, actually, besides the Angels.
Yeah, that one kind of fell off. I was really hoping that the boost of Ohtani and everything else that was supposed to be on that team would help, but I think the biggest thing was trying to deal with the Athletics and Mariners over the last while, because the Angels were up there for a while, and then they just kind of died.
Yeah, which right now they're sitting at 500, pretty much one game under, but I mean, but still.
That division's too hard.
Yeah, absolutely, but it's still pretty good. I mean, out of all those, if that's the only pick that doesn't end up bad.
Now, my second wild card, I'll take it.
Oh, yeah. Middle pack of yeah, well,
I actually apparently picked the Yankees over the Cubs in 6 in the World Series. I totally forgot about that. All right, I'll still sit on that.
Well, I was just going by the division.
Oh, yeah. I'll still sit on that, though. I mean, it's not a bad prediction, but we'll see. There's still a lot of time to go.
Now, all right, I'm going to hit you up with my last question. Really, and because I said the other day I want to talk about this just for a split second. What year is it that the Bears will make the playoffs?
I mean, as weird as the NFL is, they could potentially do it this year, but I don't see that as the likely outcome. I'm going to say I think the first time we see them make the playoffs is next season, so 2019-2020 season.
Interesting, yeah.
Just because I like what they've done. You got Allen Robinson from the Jaguars. You were able to sign him. You were able to sign Trey Burton as a tight end who can move not only inside but outside. He can play some of that Y tight end and be on the move. You've got Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen, and I really like what Trubisky's doing. And they've got a lot to do. I'd like to see Roquan Smith at camp, but he's yet to sign his deal. He's the only draft pick from this most recent NFL draft that has yet to sign out of any round, which is crazy.
I thought that was crazy in the first place. And the reasoning that they gave, it was something about the catch rule, I believe, is why they said that he wasn't signed or something like that, or they haven't.
Part of it is the helmet rule, and I've been following this really closely. But it's also the problem is the Bears want to be able to take away guaranteed money anytime that they feel like it. Basically, essentially, it's if they speak against the franchise or say something harmful against the franchise or anything that the Bears deem that doesn't fit their rules, they want to be able to have that out of voiding some guaranteed money, which they had it in other contracts, but I don't know if it's because the helmet rule is on top of that, or there's been a lot of murky reporting on it just because neither side really wants to say what's going on. They don't want to give out too much information, but I'd like to see him sign soon, hopefully. So.
Right. Yeah, it's gonna be. I think eventually you have to sign. Like it has to happen sometime this preseason. It's gonna hurt the team if not. Clearly, really doesn't make any sense to me. I just think they should one way or another. One side's gonna have to make a different or kind of, I guess, just agree to disagree and just sign something just because they need him. They really do. They're going to need him this season if they want to compete for that playoff spot, which is possible. And I actually one last question. So what's a successful season? Like, is it 8-8? What would you consider successful, and anything under that would be a failure?
It's hard to put on wins and losses. As much as I know you want me to, I would probably say you at least have to improve from last year where they finished 5-11. I think if you can at least go 7-9 or 8-8, that's a successful season. And anything above that is extra. The biggest issue that they're running into is, or something that even if you don't get the wins, but you're competitive, you're not losing by 24 points, 27 points. You're in every single game and you are super close, even if you're not able to get that final score or hold that final stop that the defense needs to. As long as you're competitive every single game and you're not getting your ass kicked, I think it's a successful season. As long as you see some growth from Trubisky and Cohen and show that Allen Robinson is healthy, something like that.
Okay, so pretty much you're saying the record could be 5-11, but it doesn't mean it's a failure. I mean, I see where you're going with that, and I wouldn't disagree. Just when you have a first year head coach in Nagy, I see where you're going with that. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up here because we're running about an hour and 20 minutes, which is about what I thought it would be. But yeah, let's wrap it up. Thanks for joining me, John. Do you have anything else you want to say?
No, I mean, this is a blast, and I'd love to come on again, especially when it comes to football season. This is always fun talking sports. So.
Oh yeah, always exciting. Always exciting talking with you too. Yeah, I think that's all I had to say too. I'll talk to you guys again sometime next week, towards the end of next week, and like I said, thanks for joining me, John. We'll talk to you again soon. Peace out.
Anytime. Have a good night.
You too.